I never want to be in the situation where everything is off the rails. So if I'm really feeling stretched thin, if I'm really feeling like I can't do it all, then I have to start prioritizing. Then I have to start, if you're on a lifeboat and you can only take so many things, this is where it really matters that you think about what you need. And so if, if for example, when I was, finishing the book and under, unusual amounts of stress based on the demands of the book, the demands of my practice, the demands of the podcast, all these other things, I just made a very clear unilateral decision. Like, there's certain things I'm not going to care about. And one of them is going to be eating. Like, I'm going to indulge and kind of eat whatever the hell I want to eat. But I'm not going to compromise sleep or exercise. Because I know that those two things factor far more into my productivity, my cognitive capacity, and my mood, truthfully. And yeah, in an ideal world, I would be firing on those cylinders plus eating perfectly. But I was like, look, sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. And if my assistant manages to be able to get me a great salad for lunch today, that's awesome. But if she can't, and I'm starving and I just want to go and have a bowl of cereal, so be it. I'm just going to have a bowl of cereal. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up over this or let it bleed into some other areas. And of course, I hope that that's not something that endures forever. And of course, it doesn't. You just have to remember that you got to remember why you're doing this, right? So I think I don't know that motivation is the right word. I think it's sort of purpose that matters. I don't really know what motivation means. I at least for me personally, I'm sure for some people that word has meaning. For me, kind of purpose is the thing that matters.
A more accurate word for me to have used would have probably been something like consistency over a long period of time.
Yeah.
For this, because we're looking at longevity by definition up until the end of life.
Yeah.
You began this conversation asking what do I want to look like when am I still having sex when I'm 90? Which means that you're making decisions in the now which are very different to if you only have a 5-year or a 10-year or even a 20-year timeline to what you do. Your training protocol, which the risk to reward, it may be fun to do this particular training style, it may be,
Yep.
But what's the injury risk and what would the downstream costs of that be in 30, 40, 50 years' time? So we're talking...
I don't have great advice for how to get somebody there. I mean, I just know that I've crossed that threshold probably in the last 5 years. And I'm really happy about it. I really, it's actually created a much greater sense of calm in my life.
Less hurried in a way, sort of less...
Yeah, and also just less harsh. It used to be that every day, I used to say this, every day you have to burn at least one match. And a match for me being burned was a physical exertion to the point of wanting to puke. I had to do that at least once every single day. There was no workout 7 days a week that didn't at least produce that once. So even like if I was out on a recovery ride, I would still have to close the ride. I used to live at the top of a hill, and it was a 1 kilometer hill, and it would always be a 1 kilometer sprint to the death, where I was always trying to hit a PR. If I went into the weight room and the goal today was to deadlift, it was like always going to try to PR. And I mean, I am so far from that mentality today that it sometimes, like I'll go in and I just don't feel right during the warm up. Like it just doesn't feel good. And I'll say, you know what? I'm going to abort the deadlift today. I'm going to go and do some safer exercises where the stakes are a lot lower. And if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get punished for it the way I'm going to punished if I'm doing deadlifts and I, don't have my form just right. And so, yeah, you've got to be able to play the long game, I think. And I don't know what to tell somebody to get them there other than anchoring them to the marginal decade. Because if you know what you're training for, then of course you wouldn't take that risk, right? Like, and honestly, I think what we have an epidemic of is people who don't know what they're training for. Like, if you really stop them and ask them, like, are you doing this because you want to look good on the beach? Are you doing this because you want bragging rights? Are you doing this so the other guys at the gym look at you? Like, it's okay to say that the answer to those questions is yes, but at least be deliberate about what you're doing and why. Because if you are doing this to look good on the beach or to have bragging rights, then you might have to compromise some of your long-term goals. But at some point, you got to decide, like, what matters the most.